what in the heck is going on with all these grading companies in sports cards, in the hobby? I do not like this. Today, we're going to break this down. We're going to look at how many grading companies there are, which ones you should use, and which ones you should turn and run the other way. Let's do this. Okay, if you're anything like me, you should grab a beer for this one because it's going to be a lot of information and it's going to be quite ridiculous. Okay, so I'm sure, as most of you know, in 2019 and 2020, as COVID set in, everyone was getting ready to get their sports cards back out of their attic and see how much money they can make off of them. So they pulled everything back out, started going through there, and then the people that were already in the hobby were talking about buying those collections or buying those cards and then grading them to turn an even larger profit than they were already going to make, which set the sports card hobby into a frenzy. All the prices were going up continuously for weeks on end, months on end. You couldn't lose. Everything you were buying was a win. You could grade any card you wanted, and as long as you got an 8 or above for your grade, you could flip it and make more money. And obviously that led to a whole bunch of problems and a whole lot of new grading companies in the hobby, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. We have far too many now. If you're anything like me, I thought there were only going to be 5 or 6 total companies out there, maybe 7 or 8. Obviously, there are 3 big ones that we've heard of, which we'll get into in a second. But before we get started here, please tell me in the comments section below how many grading companies you think there are right now, because I was way low on my number. Again, I thought it was about 5 or 6, possibly 7 to 8 companies, maybe even 9. But tell me if you think that you can figure out how many grading card companies there are out there right now and how many there should be realistically for this hobby. If you're anything like me, you spend the majority of your time scrolling through Facebook sports card groups that you're in because you're in way too many, and you're looking for cards that you can buy. And so you see the people that are putting up sales posts and they're trying to sell through cards that are in their collection or cards that they've just amassed over the last couple of years. So I was scrolling through one today and it kind of got me thinking, how many grading card companies are there actually? This guy was selling through some different slabs that he had, and I did notice that there were a few like PSA and Beckett slabs, which kind of got me interested. And then I noticed that there were a few different ones that I didn't recognize. And I started thinking to myself, how many grading card companies could there possibly be? There can't be that many. So what I did was I pulled up eBay on my cell phone, went to the eBay app, went to the search bar and typed in graded cards. That was it. Just wanted a generic search, and I wanted to see how many would come up. So it came up with a few right off the bat, again with like the PSA, Beckett, those kind of companies that I was already aware of. And then as I started scrolling down, I started seeing different slab on different slab on different slab. They all looked a little bit different. They obviously have the same overall look to them, but they look just a little bit different. So I started clicking on each individual one, and we're going to go through them all. We're going to take a look at every single one that I found on eBay that's available for purchase as of today. And I'm going to throw a picture up on the screen here of each one of these so that you guys can see exactly what they look like. Now this first one, I'm pretty sure everyone knows, the number 1 grading card company in the world. Everybody pretty much knows it's PSA. PSA, it's the red slab. So here you go, take a look at these. There are actually 2 slabs here, and the reason why I'm putting this up, because I'm sure a couple of you are going to catch on to this fairly early here. I'm going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. These are what PSA slabs look like, but also, if you're the person that's putting these listings on eBay, knock it off. You're not tricking anyone, you're not fooling anyone, and if you're a buyer on eBay, make sure you read through these stupid listings that are on here. These are PSA slabs, but as you can see from these actual listings that are on eBay, they say mystery packs, and then they list a 2018-19 Luka Doncic Silver Prism Rookie PSA 10. You're not actually buying that card for $20, obviously. This person's selling mystery packs. You have a chance to hit this card potentially. Stop listing this stuff on eBay. Stop buying these. Stop clicking on these. Just don't even give these people what they want. Keep on scrolling past. But anyways, this is the most recognizable slab and the one that typically holds the most value in the sports card industry. The red slab with the white label. They also have a hologram that says PSA on the front. This one I'm pretty sure everyone knows, so we're going to go ahead and move on. All right, going back to that Facebook sale that I was looking at, this is actually the Beckett card that was listed in there. Pretty recognizable card as well, and so I've used it as an example here to show the slab. This is a BGS 9, so a Beckett 9 of a 1989 Fleer Ken Griffey Jr. rookie card. Very recognizable again. This is a clear slab all the way through the top, except for they put their kind of like a nameplate in there, as you can see, which is gray, and then it has the black lettering. This is probably the second most recognizable besides PSA, or equally, just depends, kind of what your preference is. But this one right here typically holds the second highest value when it comes to slabs in general. So again, these are probably the top 2 companies. Now this third one that we're going to look at This is where it kind of gets a little bit interesting because other people think that some companies are 3 or 4 or 5 when it comes to sports cards. But those two are typically the top two. And then after this, you're going to go with SGC. So the SGC, also known as the tuxedo to a lot of people, is the black slab. So it's all black. It has a white label, which we're going to take a look at here. These right here are typically sometimes the second or third highest value, and typically the highest value when it comes to vintage cards. That's something that they've specialized in for a long time. Personally, I've used PSA and SGC to submit cards. I like using both of the services. Just kind of depends. Which one I use depends on the value of the card, also the turnaround time. If I'm okay waiting a little bit longer, but the card, maybe is a little bit more valuable and needs to go to PSA so that I can maximize the sale when that card comes back, I'll use them. I do like the look, though, and the feel of the SGC slab. I like their grading system. I like using them for autographs as well. I just like the way that it displays the 10 autograph grade and the 10 card grade, ideally, right, on the front of the slab. So I've sent some cards off to SGC and really like using them as well. But again, these are kind of the top 3 companies. So PSA, Beckett, SGC have set themselves apart. They've been around for years. Tons of resources, tons of assets. Those are pretty much the top 3 companies in the grading industry. And then this is where everything kind of goes off the rails from here on out. Okay, I guess before I say goes off the rails, I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to CSG as well. So this is Certified Sports Guarantee. You can look them up yourself. This is a picture of their slab, also very recognizable. They used to have a green label, which everyone hated. They made a really good choice, though, in switching the label to a black and white, a lot more sleek looking, doesn't stand out quite like the green, not quite as ugly. This slab, in my opinion, is one of the best. It's one of the thickest, sturdiest slabs, holds the card really well inside. The card does not move at all in there. The slabs are stackable. They're very sturdy, though. If you were to try to bend one or snap one by hand, it doesn't feel like you could do it at all. Whereas with some of the other slabs, I've had this problem with a PSA, for example, or some other of the thinner slabs, which we'll talk about here in a minute. They feel like they could almost snap in half if you were to try to break it over your knee or something. Hopefully nobody's doing that with their cards, but I just like this because, again, it's super sturdy. CSG also is part of a company that owns multiple different lines of business. There's one company that grades coins and paper money. There is another branch of their company that does comic books and has done comic books for 20 or 30 years. And they're a leader in the comic book industry as far as grading those, and they got into trading cards in the last couple of years. I think that they've got a pretty solid foundation as well, so I would bank on them as a pretty solid number 4 when it comes to grading cards. But other than this, we're kind of starting to get into the rabbit hole here. How many grading card companies do we really need? Obviously, the hobby is only so big. It reached its peak, at least in my opinion, in 2020 and 2021. The most people that are ever going to be interested in sports cards were interested. The most number of cards to be sent off to be graded has already happened. So how many grading companies do we really need? And on the other side of that, too, how many different opinions do we need? Because every new person or every new partnership that starts up a company that's grading these cards, we're literally just taking their opinion as a fact when it comes to their label and what grade they want to slap on there, right? We've got a few companies already, reputable or not reputable, however you feel about, PSA, the history of sports cards, etc. We already have companies that are really well established, that are really big, that you can send your cards to, pay an amount of money, get your cards back, sell them, it works. We've got that already, and we have a scale from 1 to 10 that we rely on, and we hope for a consistent number grade based on what we see with the cards and their imperfections. How many of those different card companies do we need, and how many different opinions do we need? As we get more and more companies, there's going to be even more scrutiny on, is it a 9, is it a 9.5, is it a 10? And that's where it brings us to, the grading scale itself, where PSA goes from a 10 to a 9, and then Beckett goes from a 10 to a 9.5 to a 9. Without PSA having a 9.5 grade, is a 9 in PSA supposed to be the same as a 9.5, and then is their 8.5 equivalent to a 9 with Beckett? There's already a lot of gray area here when it comes to grading, so the more we water that down and the more opinions we get in the hobby about what a card actually grades, the less I think that it matters. So I think we need to get a consistent system across the board, and we need to really hone in on what makes a 10, a 9, and an 8 because that's obviously what drives the difference in value between these cards as well. But we're going to go ahead and take a look at a couple more companies here. Okay, look, I can make this a 45-minute video, but I don't want to do that, so I'm going to start to speed things up here a little bit. One of the slabs that actually drew me into that Facebook sale, and the reason that kind of got my mind going about how many different grading companies there are, I'm going to show it to you here, but there is a company called BCSC. So I commented on there and said, man, it seems like every other week I see a new grading company pop up, or somebody that's got a new opinion about what grade should be, etc., or new slabs, fake slabs, whatever you want to call them. Because anybody, just so you know, in case you're not aware, anybody can buy the plastic slab the cards come in, slap a label in there, call it whatever they want. So there's new companies that pop up every other week, it seems like, with these new slabs and these new grading companies and all that. So this is what the guy said back to me on his post. He said, this is a pretty good one, in reference to the company, right? So this is a pretty good one. It's veteran-owned, subgrades, color match slabs, and the best turn times around out there. Prices are great too. Well, I would hope the prices are great, and I'm going to talk through that too. So if you're paying money to any of these other companies that are not the big 4 or 5, you're making a huge mistake, in my opinion. Back during the pandemic, when things got bogged down, if you're familiar with how they got a backlog going and they weren't able to process through cards as quickly, it did open the door for some of these other companies to come in and try to kind of clean up their mess, if you will. Things are really running a lot more efficiently now. You can send cards now to PSA, SGC, CSG for as little as $12 to $18 for each of those 3 companies and get your cards back. PSA's got the longest turn time. If you use their cheapest service right now, it's about 120 days. If you choose to pay a little bit more, you can get them back as quick as 4 weeks or so. But if you're spending money for one of these companies that is not well known at all, even if you're only paying $8 or $10 per slab, you might as well take the extra $4 or $5 per card and send them off to a company that is much more reputable, that will get you a greater return on your investment if you choose to sell these cards. Again, everyone's got their own opinions and everything. If you are strictly just collecting these cards and you like to do it for fun and you want to get them into the cheapest slab you can so that they are encased in something, I have no problem with you sending them wherever the heck you want. But if you do want to buy these cards that are really cool, and you want them to be encased, and you want them to be done correctly, and you want to maintain these cards for a long time, and potentially somewhere down the road, if you ever want to sell them, we know that PSA, Beckett, SGC, and possibly CSG are going to be around for the long haul. So in my opinion, you really should use one of those companies. I don't care which one you use. If you like one more than the other, that's great. But at least use one of those so you're not wasting your own money and throwing money away using one of these companies that nobody's ever heard of. All right, for the next part here, we are just going to throw up a bunch of these other grading card companies. There's one other one that's kind of been tossed around a little bit more than the rest of them during the pandemic and everything, which was HGA. They were kind of the first ones to start doing a custom label, which I know a lot of people like. And they do have the subgrades on there. So that's one that's been tossed around. Here's an example of theirs as well. But I just kind of wanted to go through the other companies that are out there and let you know how many there actually are. So HGA is one, BCCG, which you'll see here. If you see a BCCG card out there, if you see a card graded by BCCG in this clear slab with that white label like that, and it is not a 10, you should turn around and head the other direction as fast as you can. You want nothing to do with that card. They will literally slap a 10 on any card. Buy the card, don't buy the slab. Look at the card inside of the slab to see what conditions it's in. I have bought a couple of BCCG cards in the past only because I inspected the card visually myself to make sure it looked good, but they will slap a 10 on anything. Their grade holds no weight. It could be a 7, it could be a 9, it could be a 10. It doesn't matter. It could still be a 5 if it's a 10. It could be a 10 if it's a 5. So just look at it. I'm telling you, don't do it. Look at the card. Don't even mess with it. There's also ISA grading. We got WCG. We got First Graded. We got Sideline Grading Company, which is a good name because you're always going to be on the sideline compared to the rest of these companies. So that's a good start. MGS. We got 4 bases sports cards, which has no indicators on the front whatsoever. They do have a nice hologram on the back, but of course there's nothing on the front that would even tell you what company it is. And Gem Grading Inc., rounding it out for a grand total of 14 grading card companies. 14! That is way too damn many. We only need 4 or 5. That's it. We don't need any of these other ones. Stop making grading companies. Thank you for checking this out. Please subscribe if you haven't. Like the other videos. Here you go. Here's some more stuff. Thank you guys.